This video summarizes the production decisions of a monopolist and compares the efficiencies of a monopoly with those of more competitive firms. A monopoly can only exist when the barriers to enter an industry is so significant no other firms can enter. This can happen by government action. By granting a patent or copyright to an individual or a firm, the government gives the firm an exclusive right to produce and sell a product. A patent is the exclusive right for a period of 20 years from the date the product is invented. A copyright is a government-granted exclusive creative right to produce and sell intellectual property. The government may at times grant a firm a public franchise, making it the exclusive legal producer of a good or service. A public franchise is the designation by a government agency that the firm is the only legal provider of a good or service. We see these franchises most often with utilities. When a firm owns or controls a key resource, that firm becomes a monopoly. If no other firm can access a certain resource, there is no competition. Network externalities is the situation where the usefulness of a product increases with the number of consumers who use it, taking advantage of economies of scale. Public policies and antitrust laws attempt to regulate monopolies, often in favor of consumers. By breaking up monopolies into smaller firms, they can create competition. Another measure is the crafting of regulations that either control the prices of the products supplied by monopolies or limits quantities and fees. In some cases, government have taken over industries or parts of an industry, such as the creation of mass transit systems. The market demand curve and the demand curve for a monopoly is the same, because the firm is the market. When a less competitive firm cuts the price of a product, consumers are happy. When a less competitive firm cuts the price of a product, consumers are happy, but the firm receives less revenue from each unit that it would have sold at a higher price. If a monopoly decides to change its price knowing that the quantity demanded will also change, it must consider the effect on total revenue. Price and quantity will move in the opposite directions. When the price is decreased, the output effect occurs and the quantity sold increases. At the same time, the price effect decreases the price for every unit sold. Comparing monopolies and competition. A monopoly maximizes profits or minimizes losses where price is greater than marginal revenue and marginal cost. A competitive firm maximizes profits or minimizes losses where price is equal to marginal revenue, which is equal to marginal cost. The monopoly charges a price above the marginal cost. In comparison to a competitive firm, consumers are harmed by the higher price. Wealth is transferred from consumer to monopoly owners. So how do we measure monopoly efficiency losses? Monopolies cause a reduction in consumer surplus. Monopolies also cause an increase in producer surplus. Monopolies cause a deadweight loss, which represents a reduction in overall efficiency. A deadweight loss is where the monopolist produces less than the socially efficient quantity of output. Because a monopolist sets its price above marginal cost, it places a wedge between consumers' willingness to pay and the producer's cost. This wedge causes the quantity sold to fall short of the social optimum. In regulating monopolies, antitrust laws allow the government to prevent mergers that may curb competition. It allows government to break up companies that behave as monopolies. It also prevents firms from practices that make markets less competitive. Some of the significant antitrust laws are the Sherman Antitrust Law of 1890. This law limits the market power of large companies and trusts. In 1914, the Clayton Act closed loopholes of the Sherman Act and defines the government authority to bring private lawsuits against monopolists. And now we come to embracing the concepts. Because the monopoly firm is the market, its demand curve has a negative slope. Because of the negative demand curve, where in order to sell more quantity, the firm must lower its price, the marginal revenue curve has a negative slope and falls at twice the rate of the demand price. The monopoly firm's profits are maximized at the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Distinctive from the competitive firm, the monopoly firm's price is greater than its marginal revenue at the optimal level of output. The monopoly firm's optimal level of output and profit maximizing level of output is below the level that maximizes the sum of consumer and producer surplus. The monopoly firm causes a deadweight loss. Monopoly firms can increase profits with policies and price discrimination, appealing to consumers with different values of the product. Price discrimination can benefit some consumers and raise economic welfare, lessening the deadweight loss. So what are the differences between competition and monopolistically competitive firms? Both share many characteristics, including many firms in the industry and long-run earning of zero economic profits. Monopolistically competitive firms charge a price greater than their marginal cost, and monopolistically competitive firms do not produce at the minimum average total cost. So what are the differences in efficiencies? Monopolistically competitive firms, by definition, are not efficient, either productively or allocatively. Consumers do benefit from being able to purchase a product that is differentiated and likely provide greater utility. We've talked about an oligopoly and the interdependency of firms in an oligopoly. Game theory is a tool that studies how people make decisions in order to achieve certain goals. Goal attainment in these circumstances depend on their interactions with other people, or in the case of an economic analysis, the interaction with other firms in their industry. The interdependency of an oligopoly or a duopoly is a game played with a playoff matrix that shows the income that each firm will earn given alternative strategies by those firms. Collusion is a strategy that, if honored, will result in the greatest payoff for each firm. The dominant strategy is one that is best for a given firm, regardless of the strategies employed of others. This slide is an example of game theory. In this case, we have two firms. Each has two different pricing strategy options. What is the dominant strategy for each firm? You are the CEO of Apple. What strategy would you employ if Windows chooses to lower its price? Describe the choices made by each firm for each of these quadrants. Finally, ask yourself this question: is there a trade-off between market power and efficiency?